Hello. With Christmas on the way, or happening right now, or having just passed, depending on when you're watching this, I thought it would be a good moment in time to remember some of those classic GW gifts that have been lost to the ages. Things that you would struggle to get hold of right now unless you've got a time machine or are very lucky on eBay, but which at one point in time made for the perfect Christmas morning presents. I'm Jordan. This is Jordan Sorcery, and today we're looking at 5 long-lost GW stocking fillers. Well, this is just a little bonus video that was voted for by my patrons, a chance to run through some of the long-lost gems that I've come across in my research or remember fondly from many years ago. These are very tough to get hold of right now, so they probably wouldn't make for ideal gifts this Christmas, but once upon a time, they were perfect. And because Christmas is the ultimate countdown, we're going to do this in a totally arbitrary, numbered list. Path to Victory. Now, if you've spent any time on my channel, you will know that I am a big fan of fighting fantasy. It was an important part of my beginning in the sort of fantasy hobby space. So it has long pained me that there was never a Warhammer or a 40k game book that took a page out of the fighting fantasy genre. Except there was, and I just missed it. First published in 2011, the Path to Victory series is comprised of 4 books, 2 set in 40k and 2 set in the Warhammer world. The first was originally launched as a Warhammer 40,000 gamebook, before Games Workshop took a little inspiration from themselves and renamed the series Path to Victory. That first book was called Hive of the Dead, and it was written by C.Z. Dunn, or Christian Dunn, a longtime editor and author for Black Library. The other 40k release in the series was Herald of Oblivion by veteran gamebook writer Jonathan Green. Green has amassed an impressive list of credits both as an author of traditional books, some set in Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 universes, but also, perhaps more famously, as an author of several books in the original Fighting Fantasy series. And he has gone on to create his own line of Ace gamebooks, which turn classic stories like Dracula into choose-your-own adventures. So, the Path to Victory series had a heavyweight writer ready to go. Green also wrote one of the Warhammer Fantasy Path to Victory books, Shadows over Sylvania, a book that I am very keen to get hold of as a physical copy, so give me a shout if you have one for sale. And the final book in the series was Beneath the City of the White Wolf by M.F. Bradshaw, which, by virtue of the reused but still awesome John Blanche Knights Panther cover, is also something I would love to have in the collection. So, if you can find them, I would wager that these books would make for some quiet reading, reflection, and battles to the death on Christmas morning. Warcry, the Warhammer CCG. No, not that fancy Age of Sigmar miniatures game. No, this is Fantasy Battle reduced to CCG card level, and it is good fun. But it didn't last for all that long. It probably deserves an entire video of its own, but who has got that kind of time? The game was launched in 2003 by Sabertooth Games, who were a specialist subsidiary of Games Workshop. It ran until 2007, with as many as 14 expansions released, as well as special and limited edition sets, like 2 faction starter boxes. Of particular interest to me, at least, is that the 2004 set Siege of Middenheim seems to fully embrace the events of the Storm of Chaos campaign, which I think is really fun. But until I make a video about the Warcry CCG or the real Storm of Chaos, I guess we won't know for sure how it all played out. If you are anything like me, you will know that there is some strange magic to that moment when you just open up a booster pack of CCG or TCG cards. There's nothing quite like it in the hobby space. The mixture of excitement and anticipation and I don't know what else. I guess that's what happens when you have forced scarcity and rarity in a game. It just makes the collector capitalist mind explode with just excitement. So I know I'm being a massive enabler, but I just find it quite fun. Citadel combat cards. Not quite a CCG, but still a card game, and one that was terrific fun to play. a really good two-player experience that was quick and silly and just good fun. In the late 80s, Jervis Johnson became convinced that there was a market worth exploring in kids' card games, based on how much top trumps he was seeing here, there, and everywhere. From that idea, the combat card was born, basically a top trumps game where players would choose their highest stat in the hopes of striking down their enemy. The point of difference was that these were Citadel combat cards, every single one featuring a character and miniature drawn from the worlds of Warhammer and 40k. The names were mostly fun inventions, but the minis were a showcase of the best heavy metal work available at the time. Johnson wrote a couple of additional rule sets released via White Dwarf as well, all of which meant that one small deck of Citadel combat cards could be simple yet hugely engrossing fun, just a really good little multiplayer experience. I've actually done a full video on them if you want to learn more, but for now, why don't you break out the Space War and get playing? Okay, so Games Workshop art books is a bit of a fudge because it's not just one thing, it's loads of different things. And also, they are massive. So getting these into someone's Christmas stocking is a bit of a challenge, but trust me, it's worth it. In 1989, when Games Workshop launched their publishing imprint called GW Books, they also published a couple of spectacular art books. One was called Ratspike and featured a barrage of incredible art by John Blanche and Ian Miller. Seriously, this is the art book worth having. And the other was called Blood and Iron and was full of some pretty great Les Edwards art as well. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before GW Books was dissolved, and whilst the fiction lines went over to Boxtree to continue being published, the art books fell out of print permanently. Fortunately, with Games Workshop having generated such an overwhelming collection of amazing art from a huge variety of artists, they have occasionally published dedicated art books once again. There were a couple more collections of rare Blanche art, and amongst my personal favourites are the Gothic and the Eldritch, published in 2001 to collect some absolutely amazing and inspiring Jez Goodwin concept art and sketches. And then in 2003, the art of Adrian Smith pulled together some more sublime work from another Games Workshop legend. Both of those books shed incredible light onto the process that goes into creating the awesome art that makes GW so special and brings its worlds to life in such an incredible way. Honestly, they're amazing. Do you remember these? Because I didn't, but they are really, really cool. This is a Warhammer Warriors book. You and a friend each get one of these, you swap, and then you can somehow have a duel between two characters just using the pages of these books. It's pretty wild. When your friend has got your book and you've got your friend's book, you keep a character sheet and then you use that to direct your opponent to specific pages in the book you just handed them. Pages that will have actions like advance, dodge, or disarm. From that, you can then work out who has done damage to whom, how many hit points you've got left, and what's going to happen to your character next. They were first released in 1999, and there were 6 books in total, all written by Rick Priestley. They featured as main characters Cal Jericho, Blood Angel Captain Leonidas, Sister of Battle Ephrael Stern, Khan the Betrayer, some anonymous Eldar Exarch, and an even more anonymous Tyranid Warrior. Each page features a combat grid that relates to the action that's being taken by the character, and then there is some art in there as well, and a list of actions that your character can take in the next turn. I would describe how these worked in more detail, but basically it melts my brain if I think about it too much. I really cannot understand how you write these things. It's kind of mind-blowing. There was actually a mid-80s series of books called Lost Worlds that operates on the same mechanical principle, which allowed you to play as Man in Chainmail with sword and shield, or Winged Gargoyle with scimitar, or one of many, many other characters. The creator and author of that series, Alfred Leonardi, actually created an even earlier series as well, starting in 1980, called Ace of Aces, and that one allowed players to recreate dogfights in World War I and later World War II. The Warhammer Warriors series didn't stick around for very long, sadly, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually quite good fun. Just make sure that you get 2 of these for Christmas, otherwise you're going to have to swap the book back and forth between players, and it's going to get even more confusing. So there you have it, just a couple of Christmas stocking filler ideas for if you have a time machine or just a huge wodge of cash to spend. I hope that you've enjoyed this rather silly and frothy list. I have enjoyed spending some time just going through bits of random GW nonsense, as I always do, so any excuse is good for me. I hope that you have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you very much for watching. I am Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery. I tried to get Martha to play these with me, but she just laughed in my face and said it's too complicated. She prefers Warhammer 8th edition.